There we go. We'll just get back to the slideshow. Right, there we have it. All right, so this is session number 2 that we commenced a week ago. And this is going to be dealing with the common on-court situations for the first section. Then we have some uncommon court situations, and we have working with line judges. And we'll try to do a review of the 9 most important rule changes for 2023, which didn't amount to too much. And we will actually cover a few of those in this session as well before we actually get to the new rule section. So portable nets, one of the first things that we encounter as referees on some of the courts. So you need to know what the rules are concerning those and how to work with those, and have your games correctly called. So when a ball strikes a horizontal bar or the center base before going over the net, it's obviously a fault. Never went over the net, nothing else but a fault. If the ball goes over the net and hits the center base, horizontal bar, or gets caught before landing, it's a replay. So usually what happens, the ball's hits the top of that loose tape at the top, falls directly down and hits that center horizontal bar, or even maybe the middle leg pedestal. And if it does that before hitting the ground, it's going to be a fault. If the ball bounces with enough backspin to go over the net, to hit the net or horizontal bar prior to the second bounce, you're still going to play a replay. So that's kind of an uncommon on-court situation. All right, so the ball goes over team A hits it over the portable net into team B's area, into their court surface, and it bounces back over the net without them touching it. But in doing so, it spins back into that net. It's going to be a replay as well. It's before the second bounce. Let's talk about serves. This is something that certainly new officials have some difficulty with, trying to determine what is an illegal serve. And it's not all that difficult. And what you need to do is to really have a good view of this and to make your best judgment and make your best calls. So with the standard serve, the volley serve is what we're talking about when we're talking standard serve. The ball has to be, and the paddle has to be moving in an upward motion. This is the paddle, not the ball. The paddle has to be moving in an upward motion and has to have arc to it. All right, so the arc is where it's actually going, you're swinging from low to high, and it's going up over the head more or less. That's arc. Paddle below the wrist, the waist. It used to be defined as the navel. It's now the waist. And of course, that's a little ambiguous. There's an area in there. Everybody's waist is a little bit different. So you have to really judge that accordingly and be a little bit forgiving. But again, that paddle needs to be below the waist at the time it makes contact with the ball. The highest point of the paddle head must be below the wrist break. All right, must be equal to or below. In other words, it is a fault if that highest point of the paddle goes above the wrist break, then it is to be called a fault. So with the new 2023 rules, spinning the ball with the hand is not permitted when serving the ball. And it doesn't matter what serve you're making, whether it's the volley serve or the drop serve, you are not permitted to spin that ball at all, especially with the drop serve. As you already know, you're not allowed to apply any motion to the drop serve when releasing that ball. The referee can order a replay for the serves that they're not certain comply with the rules. So that's new for 23. And we will go over the procedure for that. But just knowing that you can call for a replay if you're not absolutely sure, but you think something was wrong, you just say stop play. We have questionable release on that ball. I'll recall the score, or replay, and I'll recall the score. The referee will call an immediate fault if the serve clearly violates any one of those rules. So you're immediately ready. You're watching every time that person goes up there to serve. You're going to be watching the motion. You're going to be watching the release, and you're going to call a fault if you don't believe it is in accordance with the rules. So again, the script for you when you're thinking that the ball, you're not sure whether it was an illegal serve, the script that they want you to use is, again, stop play, hands up in the air, step forward from your position behind the net post onto the court. Question about whether there was spin applied to the ball. Reserve, please. I will recall the score. Step back into your position and recall the score. The drop serve. The server may release the ball from any unaided height. You can drop from, if you're not on mute, everybody please put yourself on mute, just have a look at that. Drop from your hand, or you may have the ball on the paddle, raise it up as high as you would like, tilt the paddle to allow the ball to roll off, allow the ball to bounce, and then you can strike the ball with the paddle. And there's no concern about relationship to wrist breaks or waist or upward arc or anything like that that we have with the volley serve. So that's one of the nice things about the drop serve, that after you've released that ball and it bounces, and it doesn't matter actually whether it bounces once or twice. Haven't seen too many people hit it after a double bounce, but there's no rule that prevents you from doing that. The server's release of the ball must be visible to the referee and the opponents. So you need to keep that in mind. That ball needs to be visible to you at time of release. Otherwise, you call for a replay and a reserve if it's not visible. You call that immediately. So the drop serve, the three elements, yeah, we mentioned that. They're not required. Server out of position or wrong server. So let's just go back. Is there any questions about the serves? Because I know that's a contentious issue. And just want to make sure everybody's clear. And again, I
want to have a question if I could.
Yeah, please.
There seems to be some discrepancy in regards to the line, the imaginary sideline on a server. There, the question comes into play is whether or not both feet have to be within that outside line, the imaginary line, or 1 foot only, where they're stepping in from the corner.
Yep. Well, the rules are quite clear there, and this is true for both the drop serve and the volley serve, that the player must be behind that baseline and not extending outside of the sideline or outside of the center line. So they can be standing with their foot so that it's on the line. In other words, the imaginary extension, not the baseline. They can't stand on the baseline, but the imaginary extension of both those sidelines and the center line. They could be standing on it, but they can't be standing beyond it. But normally what you see is somebody starts outside there, they take a couple of steps, they're in, or they lift their foot, and there's 1 foot behind the baseline at the time they serve. And as long as there's 1 foot behind the baseline at the time of the serve, and there's no other violation, that's legal. And that applies to both serves.
So the second foot could, in essence, be in the air, outside the imaginary line, and that is fine.
And or over the baseline as well in the air. Yeah, it's
Yes.
It's one-dimensional, not three-dimensional, so it doesn't matter if it's in the air or not.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Just a quick question in regards to the return on the serve. Does that imaginary line extend out off the serve? Like, does the team receiving the serve have to stay within the imaginary line, or can they step to the side and use their forehand to return it?
They can stand anywhere they like. There's no restriction to the receiver team where any of the players are standing. No restriction whatsoever.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That's why you have stackers, and they're both on the same side of the court. And as long as the proper person hits the ball, there is no concern at all.
Okay, thanks.
Good.
Okay,
Al,
I just have one thing to say regarding the serve that some people are confused by, is that, as you were saying, about the feet and where they cannot be, that's when the person is serving, so that's when the strike of the ball happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the point in time that we often talk about, and that's what referees have to look at, exactly what is the point in time that the infraction occurs at, and that is, again, just as we've been saying, at the time the paddle hits the ball. Okay, exactly that point in time, paddle touches the ball, then that's the issue. If the foot's on the line, it's a fault. If it happens afterwards or they step into the court, there's absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. All right, let's carry on. Thanks, Angela. Just ignore this. Service court change. After the score has been called, if the serving team recognizes potential service error and makes a change in their positioning, the receiving team has to reposition. You call time, step in, and announce your recall the score, right? So that's just if they if the serving team has lined up incorrectly and they say, "Am I the right server?" and they say no, and they throw the ball to their partner and they're going to do a quick serve. You can't allow that, so you step into the court, call time, and allow the receiving team to realign to the correct position for that for the receiver to then be in position to strike the ball. All right, so the point that we want to make there is, again, that you throw your hands up in the air, call time, step in, and say, I will recall the score, step back out, and recall the score. Wrong receiver. If that happens after the ball has been returned, you announce receiver fault, or you call fault, receiver fault, wrong position, and go on from there. So again, we have the same problem with the service fault. It happens, we call fault at the time the server strikes, the wrong server strikes the ball. So that's the point we want to make here, is that the fault does not incur until such time as the paddle strikes the ball from the incorrect person or the incorrect position. That's when you call fault. This has been happening quite regularly, serving before the complete score is called. So in this case, what we're talking about, you've already started to call the score, and they serve the ball, and that would be a fault. And you immediately call second server or side out. What you have to look at is if you have created the problem yourself with the poor cadence. So again, you're going 4-3-2, but in this case, you go 4-3-2, and that person strikes the ball. You would be guilty of changing the cadence there. So you would throw your hands up in the air and say, we'll replay that, referee correction. I delayed on my call, and recall the score. That's only fair. So again, you have to think, if you contributed to it, that's not fair to the player, because some of them are timing it very, very closely. When you go 4-3-2, that goes bang, they're hitting that ball right away. And if you again go 4-3-2 and make that pause, the cadence is not consistent, not correct, then you're going to call for a replay. Server foot faults, you want to immediately call fault, foot fault, right foot, and follow up again, second server or side out in that case. And with everything else, when you're making these calls, you're going to make it in such a manner that you're concise and to the point. You've made it quickly, you've made it firmly, and there's no question. You're not going to be changing your mind. So you have to be saying this and not in a questioning way. You don't want to go foot fault, where they're left with doubt. Well, was that really a foot fault? So you need to call it again loudly, clearly, and deliberately. Now, non-volley zone violations. This is, again, your prime area of responsibility and focus. And this is where you're going to be watching for any foot faults. And this is where there's a lot of question regarding when they happen, how they happen, and where they were standing when they do happen. But normally speaking, it includes all players' momentum. So what we're talking about is that the serving team, Team A, has struck the ball. It goes over to B, they return it, and they're charging to the net. Team A then is going to make the third shot. And let's say in this case, they hit a hard ball back over the middle, and they're hitting it right to that player who's trying to make their way up to the no volley zone. And that player doesn't stop, and they hit a volley, and then they get out of balance, and they step on the no volley zone line, or they step into the no volley zone in itself. That's immediately a fault, foot fault, no volley zone infraction, second, that would be a point for the serving team. So your job is to be watching that no volley zone and to be watching the momentum to the no volley zone. So right away, as soon as we have a player that is making a beeline to that position, that's where we really have the focus. We're not going to be watching that ball as it was returned from the receiver to the serving team to make the third shot. We're going to be watching that player who's running up. Now, what we, again, want to speak about is that you're standing behind the net post. You're wanting to be looking straight forward, right across the net post and the net plane, but your eyes and your peripheral vision are certainly going to be taking in that motion that's happening on your left-hand side, let's say. And you, again, don't take your focus away from that person until they have curtailed their momentum. They've stopped their momentum, and it's no longer a risk of falling into that no volley zone after making a volley. If the ball bounces, you don't care. That's not of any interest to you at that point. You now then can watch both sides of the net, keeping your head and eye straight forward with your vision, making sure, again, that when the ball is volleyed, that everything is good and they're not standing on that no volley zone. So that's the main focus. That's what you have to do. That's how you have to look at it. Remember also that anything that the player is wearing or carrying after making a volley, if it falls into that no volley zone, their hat, their earring, whatever it might be, that is, again, a no volley zone violation. So when you have that violation, again, it's fault, no volley zone violation, and it would be second server side out point, whatever the case may be from whatever the violating team was. Referee error. Referees or players may stop play before the return of serve to correct the score. So again, if you call 4-3-2 and it should be 4-3-1 and you realize it after you've called it, the ball is struck by the player, you can quickly call time. Again, throw the hands up in the air, stop play. Referee error, I will recall the score. Let the ball come back and step back into your position and again recall the score correctly at 4-3-2 and let them go. If it's the player, they can do the same thing up until that return of serve now. So that's the point in time that we're interested in and have to zero in on. When that ball is served and it is an incorrect score, they can stop play, grab the ball and say, ref, I think that score was incorrect, and challenge you on that. If it is incorrect, then it's a replay. If it was not correct, it is still a fault. So, you know, I don't understand why the players, and I was kind of hoping they would leave the rule the same way as it was last year, with simply do not stop play for any reason until the end of the rally, and we'll re-straighten the score out. That's the simplest and the best method of doing it. But there are people, I guess, whose mind wanders and they want to immediately identify it. And remember, it's a fault to stop play to identify or ask for a score correction when the score was called correctly. Yeah, we said that. No volley zone foot faults called on bounce balls. So there's an example of another referee error. You're watching the ball and you see this foot in the no volley zone and you call fault, no volley zone. And they turn around to you, all four players, and said the ball bounced. And you go, it did. Referee correction or error, and we'll replay the point, the rally. Player readiness. This is something, again, that I think all referees need to learn and to be watching for at all times to keep the flow of the game going. When you're starting out, you are probably going to be the main reason that the flow of the game is not going as fast as it should. And that's something you need to be, again, very aware of. And you want to be watching for and improving your speed by moving that peg, making your marks, and doing it so that when that player is in position to serve the ball and the receivers are ready, you're ready to call the score, and you do so immediately. However, the other point that we want to make are those players that kick the ball into the corner because they're getting cold or tired, and they want to delay the serving team who's just made 2 or 3 quick points in a row, and they want to slow that pace of the game up. That's when you have to take some action, and you can talk to them, and you do have tools. Again, if it continues and proceeds, then you can use a verbal warning, technical foul, any of those that are required to remedy the situation. But remembering, when anytime I'm talking about using the disciplinary process, what we have found is that as soon as you give a player a warning, it doesn't have to be a verbal warning. It just has to be a warning and saying, you're playing slowly. I need you to improve the pace of the game. They will improve it and they will jump on it without usually any issue. You call the score when all the players are ready, or again, in the rule book, it importantly says, or should be ready. And that's where it's up to the referee's discretion. If the players are not ready, you don't call the score. But should they be ready, you can call the score if they should be in position and ready to go. So that's up to you. And we are trying to be a little bit more gracious than that. So again, if somebody is going to be just a second more or whatever the case may be, we're probably going to allow that and to continue. And don't forget also the 3 reasons to delay the serve. The receiving team can have their paddle in the air, their non-paddle hand, or they can have their back to the net. Any of the players can do that to say that they're not ready, to indicate that they're not ready. And again, if they're doing that, usually we wait and they get ready very quickly and we call the score, not an issue. If they continually do that, again, to slow the pace of the game and there's no apparent reason they're doing it, we're going to inquire what the issue is. And we're going to be letting them know that we're going to be calling the serve if they're wasting time. Stacking. It's always to a new referee, an area of a bit of confusion. The way I like to speak to this one is that you're, again, as we've already said, when you've met the players on the court, you've identified who the starting server is for each team with giving them an identification bracelet or whatever the band may be. And you've also annotated your scorecard with whatever distinguishing features they might have. Again, the pink hat, the white hat, the purple shoes, whatever it is, you're going to have that on there. And that's where I recommend that you're going to be judging who should be returning the ball or who should be serving the ball based on the score, based on the court, based on the starting server. So again, if it's side out and it's 3-4-2, we know that it's not going to be the starting server who's going to be serving. The starting server should be in the left-hand court. The starting server is not going to be the one to strike the ball. So if this team is stacking, we know that at 3 in the right-hand court, the person with the band is not going to hit the ball. So the other person is by default. So as long as that happens, we're comfortable. And that's the only way to look at it, is just identify what your starting server is doing and where they should be standing. And by default, their partner will be in the other position and doing what they should be doing. So when a team or a player asks questions or they want to have a discussion with you, you need to think about what the question is. If it's just asking the score, no issue. You're just going to give them, provide that answer. But if they want to ask you a question, you need to keep both sides equally informed and be seen to be doing that. So there are some occasions when you need to have a conference at center court. And again, where is that conference? Right at the net strap where it meets the court. You invite all the players in and you have a quick discussion and answer their question. And so they're all equally informed. If you get into a discussion and it gets heated, you want to hold the temperatures as much as you can, talking quietly, lower your voice and lower the situation and answer the question. If they continue, you just cut it off and say 15 seconds, get them into position and announce the score. Any challenge calls or rulings when the requests are necessary to resolve dispute? You want to summon the head referee or the tournament director. So this is important as a referee. You might think that it's going to reflect poorly on you when the team asks for the tournament director or the head referee. Your job at that point, it's like somebody in the police station that's being questioned and they've asked for their lawyer. you just say yes. And the next thing you do is use your cell phone to call for the tournament director or the head referee, or get somebody to get them, or you may even have to leave the court to go and get them and to bring them back. And at that point, what should happen is that the head referee, tournament director, will ask you what the issue is in front of the players, get your side of the story, and then they'll probably ask for the players, both teams, to give their opposing views. And then the head referee, tournament director, will make a ruling based on that. Now, the important thing here, it doesn't matter what the question is at that point. As soon as they ask for that tournament director, you just quickly get them. I've been in situations where I'm going, yes, but that was a discretionary call. If I call for the tournament director, they're not going to be able to support you, and you will get a loss of a timeout and a technical warning. And so you're trying to benefit them by telling them that, but what it sounds like to them is that you're trying to discourage them from asking for the tournament director, head referee. So again, that's why you just immediately stop the conversation and get the head referee, have them in. And when they say, well, ref, he called, the referee called my serve illegal, and it's not illegal. And the head referee can't do anything but say, that's a discretionary call based on the referee on the court at that time. They've ruled that service to be illegal. It is illegal, and it stands. You're awarded a technical warning with a loss of a timeout. And of course, if the team has already taken both their timeouts, it goes as far as a technical foul. And as we'll find with awarding a technical foul, that means a loss of a point. And again, a little bit later, we'll show you on the score sheet how you have to annotate the loss of the point and the marking the score sheet. Broken ball situations, they happen from time to time. You want to make sure that play continues until the end of the rally. Any player who stops play because of a suspected broken ball and looks at it and says, yes, ref, the ball's broken, that's a fault against them. And so second server, side out, or point for the other team. If that person that has lifted that ball up and says, yep, it's broken, ref, sticks their finger in it, tampers with it, stands on it, and otherwise destroys the evidence, they are to be given a verbal warning or a technical foul. Yes, not a technical foul, sorry, a technical, a verbal warning or a technical warning. That should be not a technical foul, but a technical warning right there. Before the next serve, players can ask the referee to determine if the cracked ball affected the outcome of the rally. And you will, as the referee, probably have noticed that they served the ball, it goes over the net and just doesn't come up. It hits, and you can actually hear the crack, and the person swings, does make contact with the ball, and it's an ace. And I would ask for the ball at that point, look at it, and if it's completely gone through from hole to hole, that did affect the outcome of that rally, and I would call for a replay without question. So that's how you handle broken ball situations. Line calls, another very contentious area, one where we get questions all the time. So upon an appeal by a player, by a team, you want to overrule only if you are 100% positive of where the ball landed. And that's going to be, outside the court. If it's going to be called out, it has not made contact with that line, and you're absolutely, again, 100% positive it did not. What you see happened a lot of the times is that referees that have not got a lot of experience want to make rulings as best they can, and they make them in accordance with what they see or what they think they saw. And as I talk about with the line judges are the only person that is in the proper place to make a 100% line call looking down that line. And even they will find that difficult sometimes when it's very, very close, hit very, very fast on the edge. And if they don't know 100%, they're going to show you 2 palms down, the ball is in, and they're not going to say a word, and play continues. So again, you as a referee, if a person calls it out and you have not seen it 100%, please do not overrule the call on the court. And never say, I think that ball was good, because as soon as you say, I think, there is doubt. And if there's any doubt at all, then it's good and in. So just don't use that terminology. State the ruling clearly and firmly. The ball was out. Or in that case, the ball was in. The moment a player or a team appeals to the referee or asks the opponent's opinion, they lose the right to make a subsequent in or out call during that rally. So as soon as the opponents ask their opponents, then they're no longer have anything to say about the outcome of that ball. It's up to the opponents to make the call. Usually they're not going to do that in a refereed match, so that's not something you're going to run into. If they're going to appeal to you, and you have to be able to make 100% overrule on and change the call that was on the court. And it also used to be that players, you've seen the balls that are fast, low balls that are struck between the two players at the net, they don't even turn around to look at the ball, and they call it out. They can do that, and they don't even need to call it out. They can turn to the referee and say, "Ref, did you see that?" And the referee then can make a call if they've seen it, whether that ball again was out or in. That could be the team, again, whose side the ball was on at the time, not necessarily the striking team. And they do not have to make a call as they used to. They can ask you initially. Now, if you have line judges and you as the referee cannot make a line call, the officiating team is unable to confirm a line call, then a replay should ensue. Everybody there? Everybody's being very quiet. Any questions? This is where it's hard.
Yeah, I got a few on there, Al.
All right, let's have a quick stop, and let's have Dennis go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned, like, I got a few situations that happened at the National in Kingston last year, and when the referee didn't see the foot fault for whatever reason, and the receiving team said that the team that just hit the ball was just created a foot fault on the no volley zone. So what I was doing, or what I was thinking anyway about this one, is that when there's no referee, if one team accused the other one to have created a foot fault on the no volley zone, then they would, and they don't agree each other agree. So then there's a reserve when there's no referee. So then, because there is a referee and the referee says, "Oh, I didn't see it," then the referee should say, "Okay, we'll have a reserve."
The referee can't make the call, then it didn't happen. So we're not going to go by what the other team has said. Now, again, this is an awkward situation because it's 100% the duty of the referee to be watching the no volley zone. So it's not up to the players to make the call. And if they miss it, then it did not occur. If the referee misses it, it never occurred.
Okay, but if the referee says it happened at National, and I wasn't a referee, and I just happened that I was beside. The referee said, "Oh, I didn't see it. I didn't look."
Yes, well, if that's the case, then it never happened. So the rally stands.
Okay, very good. So there's no reserve. Okay,
Right.
now the other one is the verbal warning on slowing down the game.
Right.
It happened at the Atlantic. Now you're saying that if I inform the other team, now you're slowing down the game, but you don't give a verbal warning, which you could be doing. No, are you not doing coaching?
No, that's not coaching. You're going to just be telling them to moving. So we're not looking at that as coaching. That is direction, and they are going to end up with a disciplinary issue if they don't improve.
Okay, very good. And my last one is the conversation got heated. Like, like there's an appeal made by one team,
Right.
and you bring everybody to the net and for a conference. And then at one point we're not going anywhere. So I say, okay, 15 seconds, and then you call 15 seconds, and then you call the score. But then do you still have to, like it says in the rule now, to be ready or about to be ready? And the person is not, like, the person who's complaining or delaying the game in a way. you still have to be about to be ready, so you have to still wait for them to be ready?
No, you've given enough warning on that one. You're going to call the score and they need to be in position and call the score, and they can be served upon. Depends who they are. If it's the serving team and they don't want to serve, then they have 10 seconds to get it in. Otherwise, it's going to be a violation against them. If it's the receiver's partner, then the receiver is going to be ready and the server is going to serve to them. They're going to return it and the match is on. They don't return the ball. It's a point for the serving team. So they're going to have to get into the flow of the game.
Very good. Thank you, Al.
All right, Dennis. So I see Darlene.
Al, it's Ted.
Yeah, just a minute,
Yeah.
Ted. I have one hand up just before we get to you.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead, Darlene, is it?
It is Daleen, but I'm using her computer and my name's Greg.
All right, Greg.
But just a message. I thought the new term instead of referee error was referee correction.
It should be correction. That's right.
Okay, and is that in all cases then?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Did
I
saw
just
the-
wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think I said referee error once, but I changed it to correction. But I hope I didn't have a slide that says error, do I?
I think there is
Was?
actually.
Okay, I'll go back and
Yeah.
look at that then. Okay. Yeah, very good.
Yes, the slide said error.
Did it? Okay, we'll go back and change that to correction. Good point.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, I might have missed this earlier. Al, I was just getting myself organized earlier on. In the instance of a technical fault, what is the penalty against a serving or receiving team? I just want to confirm that.
If it's the loss of a point,
Loss of a point either way?
yes. So now what we're going to teach you to do is how to document that. And if one side doesn't have any points, then you're going to award a point. When you can't take it away from one team, you're going to award it to the other because there's 0 points to take away. But we'll again talk about that in a bit. Okay, I don't want to get too far into the questions because we did a good job last week of staying away from a lot of distractions. But Suzanne, you got one quick question for me? And I hope you're not driving.
Yeah, I just want,
I hope you're not driving, Susan.
oh, I'm not driving, someone else is driving. I just wanted to speak to the first gentleman's issue when the other team called the foot fault,
Right.
because actually that exactly happened to me this weekend. And it was a heated dinking game and volleying game. And then once it was over, the opponent team said to me, they did a foot fault. And I said, no, they did not. And I watched that. I watched it very, very clearly. And I said, no, they didn't. And I said, point, and then off we went. And at the end, a few of the other refs were there, and they said there was no foot fault at all. So I just wanted to talk to that because I just experienced it, but I knew I was right that I did not see it, and it did not happen. And so I stood my ground, and then one of the level 2 referees said to me there was no foot fault.
Yeah, I
And
think.
I said, well, I didn't see it. So
I think the important point I think we want to get across here again is that the referee that's in the court is in charge and is the only person
That's
that can
right.
make a call. If they did not see it, and it doesn't matter what the opponents say, the referee can't rule otherwise. So they're just going to let that go.
Right, exactly.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Let's move on
Anyways,
then.
I just wanted to talk to that.
Thank you. Just getting back here. All right. Again, if you did not see where the ball lands, you want to announce now the phraseology they want you to use, or the script is again, by rule, call stands. So again, the opposing team says out, and the other team says, ref, did you see that? And your reply is, by rule, call stands. So again, upon an appeal, when no call is made by the player or the line judge, you are able to make an immediate call. If you're able to make an immediate call only if the line judge indicates again that they were unable to see it and unsighted, then you can again make that call immediately by calling it in or out. If you do not see where the ball landed and there was no call made by the player, you're going to announce again by rule, the ball is in. If it's again not seen out, it is in. Another important point, if you did not see where the ball landed and there was no call was made by the line judge and you canvass other line judges, you're going to have to you make the call that ball again was in. If you have a difference of opinion with the line judge and you overrule the line judge and you call it in, then that is going to amount to a replay. Okay? So you have to play a replay in that case. Spectators and coaching. Again, we run into this one periodically. Coaching is coaching is defined as any communication that a player or a team may act upon to gain an advantage or avoid a rules violation. So any direction to a player, if they can give a signal, for example, where they're giving the tee, crossing the tee for taking a timeout, you can get this for hurry up and get to the no volley zone. They don't have to be verbal. They can be hand signals. And again, anything that team can be act upon to gain an advantage is going to be a coaching situation that can't happen when play is in progress. Coaching can happen at any given time out. Any breaks in play that are like timeouts, referee timeouts, end changes, anything like that that are official timeouts, their coaching is permitted. And again, if you do find somebody that's coaching a team, you're going to talk to that team and you're going to avoid them a verbal warning or a technical warning, depending on the circumstances of the coach and what was happening at the time. Medical timeouts. All right. So again, if you have the score sheet in front of you, and you'll see that each individual's names or a position at least is there for the person's names. And right under there should be a small box. I think on the Canadian one, it actually says MTO for medical timeout. In the USA Pickleball one or Pickleball Desk, it is just an MT for medical timeout. So they are still treated the same way. So immediately a person requests a medical timeout, your job is to summon and get the medical personnel to them as quickly as possible, again, by your cell phone or getting somebody to get them and find them. You do not start your timer until such time as the medical personnel or the tournament director, in lieu of the medical personnel, if there's none at the tournament. As soon as they get to the court, you start your timeout, your stopwatch, and you're going to allow that to run for 15 minutes and know when that's going to happen. So when the medical timeout is taking place, if they're being treated, you're going to again start annotating your score sheet by putting down an X in the box from the right below the person who's called for the medical timeout. You're going to turn the score sheet over, and you're going to put at what point in time, what game number, what the player's name was, what happened, and put all the situations down there pertinent to the medical timeout. Now, what you have to find out from the medical personnel at the earliest convenience is whether or not they are approving a medical timeout. And if that's the case, they are approving it, that person has up to 15 minutes to be treated and to be able to return to the match. And of course, at 14 minutes and 45 seconds, you're going to do your standard job of calling 15 seconds, and everybody should be in place and ready to go. And then when time is in, you do your usual time in, call the score, and away we go. If that player is unable to answer that call, then it's going to be a retirement from that team. And in the situation, the odd situations, I haven't seen it happen too often anymore, and that is where the medical personnel, tournament director, do not validate the medical timeout. The rule book then says that the person who asked for the medical timeout is going to be given a technical warning and lose a timeout. If they again do not have any timeouts remaining, then that's going to be a technical foul against their team, and 1 point will be taken away from their score. Now there's a new situation. Well, a couple of new situations we have to speak to. I don't know that I have a slide for it here. And that is, if a player or the medical personnel come to your court and they want to take that player away to treat them elsewhere, they can do that. You need to then advise the other players that you will return and let them know the results of the medical timeout, or return with the person, and the game will continue, or the match will continue. You go with the player and the medical staff, and you find out what's happening, and you keep, again, control of that situation, and making sure that, of course, that they're going to be getting back to that court before the 15-minute timeout has expired. Otherwise, again, they're forfeiting, they're retiring from that match. The other new situation that has happened a couple of years back now is that the referee can call a referee-initiated medical timeout on anybody that they feel is in distress and not aware of their situation. Again, I hearken back to Indian Wells at the Nationals, and there was a player that was having heat stroke issues, did not know that they were as bad off as they were, and they actually collapsed and fell on their face and had to be taken away. And the referee could see it happening, but there was nothing that allowed them to actually intervene and stop play. And so that's why this has been instituted, so that before we get to that terrible situation where somebody gets hurt, the referee can stop play, have them evaluated, and if the referee says that there's a problem, they're allowed up to the 15 minutes. If there is no problem, they're not charged with a medical timeout, there's no issue, and play continues. And matter of fact, they're not charged at any time when the referee has initiated a medical timeout. So if they have that medical timeout and then they subsequently ask for another medical timeout on their own after having a referee timeout, that can be authorized. Yeah, there's where I did say about leaving the court. So we do have that there now. So again, here's a situation on the scorecard where Mary Smith has asked for a medical timeout. So we, again, just annotate the box there. Well, no, it was Jim Smith, sorry, obviously underneath Jim Smith's name. And so Jim Smith asked for the timeout. And this is what we do. We don't move the peg, and that's important, so that your starting server clip is still there, indicating who's serving and what's happening. You don't want to remove that and turn your score sheet over. You just simply fold it back and take a moment to write on the back of the page, MTO, Jim Smith, game 1, 641, hurt ankle, valid MTO. That's all you need to do. And that's good for the tournament staff to know and to look at when that is handed back in. So new rule change for 23. That's why it's red. Equipment timeouts at referee's discretion. Players are not required to use a regular timeout for equipment adjustment or changes, and the referee will call an equipment timeout for a reasonable duration and any number of them as the situations require. So again, if somebody breaks the paddle, that person will be allowed. As a matter of fact, what happened is that a person broke a paddle and they had to go buy one. So they were allowed that sufficient time to leave the court, get their wallet, go to the vendor, and come back and to restart the match. So that didn't happen in 5 minutes, and that was an authorized break and play. So it just gives you an idea of the extent that they're going to go to. But again, it is discretionary. It's up to you as the referee. Somebody, splits their pants, their shorts, whatever. You can give them that amount of time to fix the situation. All right, so that's the end of the common on-court situations. Then we're going to deal with common court situations. Is there any questions on what we just covered? Anybody else?
Al, I have a question.
Dennis, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to the extreme there. So I have somebody who's pissed off and breaks his paddle.
And
you know what's coming up, huh?
Yeah.
And then it says I have to get a new one. And you gave him a technical fault for breaking his paddle, didn't attempt to injure anybody. just got pissed off and break his paddle. What do you do?
That's a good one. I'm not going to be so inclined to give him a timeout, am I? So he's going to have to get one from his partner or somebody very much in a hurry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
You know,
makes sense.
Yeah, but your question continues. If they're not able to, and his partner doesn't have one, he doesn't have a backup, what do you do? You know, that's where I might, again, talk to the tournament director, head referee, and advise him of the situation, that was a self-inflicted wound where he broke his own paddle, and now he wants timeout to go procure one. And I'm not so inclined to give it to him. So good question. I don't have that in the case book. I don't have that situation yet to be able to respond to. So in that case, there's what you do. You have to call the tournament director, head referee, and get them to mediate the situation.
Okay.
It happens from time to time. Usually what you want to do is you want to think of all the rules that are in the rule book and what is the general course of action that they want you to take. And that's what you have to look for. What do you use as a precedence? What can you use as a standard? And make a ruling based on that. So the only one that I can think of from your question is that, yeah, they might be allowed to, but, you know, with, again, them breaking it themselves, I'm not inclined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good one.
Hi, Al.
Yes, who is it?
Hi, Al. It's Lisa. Lisa.
Sorry. Yeah, you just broke up. Go ahead.
Al, they could use their own timeout though if they had timeout, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point too that we want to make, is that usually in equipment timeout, previously they had to use their timeouts before you gave them an equipment timeout. And that's one of the changes for 2023. That's no longer a requirement. They can still ask for or you can grant an equipment timeout and without them using all their timeouts. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Good point. Paul? You're on mute there, Paul.
Hey, in regards to the referee initiated timeout, it doesn't specify when I can make that call. Now, is it during the rally or after the rally? Because here's a case.
No, I'll stop you, Paul, right away. We never for any reason stop a rally in progress.
That's what I was getting at. Like I say,
it's always at the end of the rally. It doesn't matter if somebody has a heart attack, as they say, they're using an extreme situation. The rally must continue to its conclusion before you do anything.
Correct. Okay, very good. Thanks.
Okay. Right. So let's go to our less common situations. Suzanne and Paul, you can put your hands down if you would, please. Right, the disciplinary process. Referees are empowered to issue different levels of discipline to maintain control of the match. You want to use them with a lot of discretion, but you need to use them. You need to use them early. The guiding rule should be to use the lowest level of discipline to stop the undesirable behavior. And of course, what is your lowest level of discipline? That's not even on the chart. And that is, again, we have somebody that says something quietly. What I do is I just put my finger to the lips and say, Paul, I heard that. And that's you. They go, oh, sorry. And they know that's not a verbal warning. That's just, again, just a caution that you're giving the player. So again, you're giving them a degree of leeway there. But however, if the situation warrants it where it was loud enough, you need to do something about it, you need to do it early. You're going to say, Paul, that's a verbal warning. And you then write verbal warning or VW underneath the technical foul, warning boxes. And you don't need to make any further annotation. You just need to put that there. Now, so the formal disciplinary process ranges from the verbal warning right up to a technical foul. So there's really only, the unofficial one, the verbal warning, which is semi-official. Then you have your official warning, which is a technical warning, and the technical foul, a loss of a point. And we'll talk about the cumulative effect of those, because you can, of course, lose a game, forfeit, and you can lose a match and have a match forfeit, depending on how many of those you're getting within the same match. And as I said, simply letting the player know you're listening and paying attention may be enough to prevent similar behavior in the future from all four players. And that's what you really want. You don't want to escalate and so that you've allowed it to continue, and then it gets really bad. And then you, excuse me, the verbal warning really isn't sufficient. Then you want to go to a technical warning, but then again, you haven't done your job in using the lowest level to prevent it early. So think about that. And again, use a lot of discretion here. So again, the verbal warning is the first step in the formal disciplinary process and should be used early in the match to eliminate unwanted behaviors. Profanity, slow play, unsportsmanlike conduct, and the like are some examples. Technical warning typically precedes a technical foul, but not necessarily. Second technical warning in a match to either partner for any reason warrants a technical foul. So all of a sudden, if you want to look at it in the baseball analogy, we have one strike before a technical warning. So 2 technical warnings is 2 strikes, and therefore equals the same as a technical foul, because a technical foul is 2 strikes by itself. And 2 strikes is again, the technical foul at 1 point is taken away. You want to document the technical warning by writing technical warning in the appropriate team's technical warning, technical foul boxes. So again, the boxes that are there, you just start with the ones that are closest on the left, closest to the numbers, and you put in technical warning or technical foul there. It doesn't matter which it is. You put it in the first box, then you go to the box to the right. If you put in a technical warning in the first one, the next one would be a technical warning on the one to the right. And then the third one would be a technical warning in the third box below, which would be enough for a game forfeit. Record the details on the back of the score sheet, not unlike the medical timeout, same sort of idea. And remembering that 2 technical warnings equals 1 technical foul and is a loss of a point. So again, here's a verbal warning situation. They put it here. This is wrong now. What we want to see is VW over here, right? Sorry, underneath the 4 boxes. So these 4 boxes aren't done right in Canada. This should be just like the timeout. There should be 2 rows of 2, and you would put the VW right here underneath the 2 rows of 2. All right, everybody understand that? Just a verbal warning right there under the 2 rows of 2. If we had it this way, then we would just write it certainly VW there. And that's all you really need. So when a technical warning is issued, we're going to, again, not removing the clip. We're going to fold back the score sheet at the end. We're going to put the TW in, first of all, in the appropriate box. And then we're going to write Smith and Smith, game 1, 671 coaching. So they got a technical warning for being coached. So here's an example of a technical foul. And this technical foul is being awarded to the serving team. How do I know that? Because, of course, their names are upright and they're not upside down. So this team's already received a technical warning, and that was Smith and Smith for coaching at 671. So they've now just received another technical warning for another coaching at 710-1. So you write down the TW, and it's showing the 2 TWs equals the TF. We are then going to go over and we're going to take our eraser and we're going to erase the 7th diagonal, 7th point, the diagonal for the 7th point. And then we're going to put in T and F above and below the last diagonal and have it that way. So if they had just come in, then they hadn't just come in, this person was serving. So I'm having a problem here with this vertical line, and I have to explain why it's there if this was the serving team. And so I don't see that as right, because they came in at 6, so that's right, and they made a 7th point with Jim Smith serving. Well, that's not right. Sorry, our slide is not showing correctly here. They come in at the 6th point, so Mary Smith would have been serving, and she would have been the first server, and they would be this way for the 7th point. that we're taking away, and it's showing us Jim. So if you're all following me, this diagonal shouldn't be there. If they came in at 5, then Jim would have been serving, and Jim Smith would have made that 6th point to the left, would have been correct, and then the 7th point, and they would have lost it. So that's who would have been serving and
Or
is
the-
serving.
Or the
And-
pin is in the wrong spot, that's all. It should have been over Mary Smith's name.
Yeah, anyway, so the important point that we want to make here anyway is to make sure that we are erasing the diagonal, and then in the box that is still good to the left of the diagonal, we're putting in a technical foul and a T and an F. And we've annotated it correctly on the form with the 2 things. So we've done that perfectly well, and we're ready to proceed now at 6. So they have to change their positioning. That's the other important thing, again, with no coaching from you. So the best you can do after awarding a technical foul, and there's a bit of confusion on the court and everything's going on, and saying technical foul is just being awarded, 1 point has been removed from this team, and the score now is 6-4-2, or no, well, wherever we are, instead of 7, it was 7-6, so it's now 6-6 and a 1. So that's all you can do, and they have to then make sure that the server then is in the appropriate box, and if it's even, they're going to be in the right-hand square. All right, sorry, a little bit confusing there. Technical fouls. Again, a lot of discretion goes into this, and we want to look at 13G in the rule book, and that sums up again what you can do and what you're authorized to do when we're issuing technical fouls. So it's warranted for aggressively or recklessly throwing a paddle, hitting a person with the ball not in play, extremely objectionable language, any threats or challenges made to the opposition or even the partner, I would imagine, losing the referee's challenge when no timeouts are available. So you'll see that one happen occasionally. So they've asked again for the tournament director, head referee to come in. They lose the challenge, so they are awarded a technical foul if they don't have any timeouts left. And any extreme unsportsmanlike behavior, that also would, of course, warrant a technical foul. After a technical foul is issued, again, you're deducting the 1 point from the offending team, erase the last point, record the TF in the appropriate boxes, and record the details in the back of the score sheet, just as we showed you. And again, that's what we're doing here again. Okay. And this one is correctly done. So in this case, the offending team has had 0. They were the receivers. They've done something to receive a technical foul. Again, you put the TF not upside down. It's upside down for their the way their names would show. And you are then awarding this team a point. So in the 8th point, you're going to write the TF just in the box with no diagonal, and they have received that point. So now again, it's up to this team, the Smith and Smith team, to make sure that they have changed position. So again, Jim Smith is serving here. So Jim, it was serving at 7, and now he's going to be serving at 8 and have to move into the right-hand court, or sorry, onto the left-hand court to make that serve, right? So again, I just repeating what I've said earlier, but you want to clearly advise the team if the point has been deducted or added to the scores, and you, without saying it, you're going to not prompt them to switch position. They have to do that on their own, and you simply then announce 15 seconds, resume play, and call the score. So after a team has issued 1 technical foul, a subsequent technical warning results in a forfeit of the game. Right. So again, they've received a technical foul. That's worth 2 strikes. So now you have to give them a technical warning for coaching, for destroying a ball, obscene language, whatever it might be. So you award a technical warning, and that's 3 strikes, and you announce game forfeit. And you announce 2 minutes and allow them to go to their neutral corners. And that's again where I want to make the point. When you do make those announcements, do not lift up your score sheet and clipboard to start annotating it. You want to be looking straight forward, make your announcements, start moving towards the the net strap in the center of the court, and start your stopwatch for the 2 minutes, watching the other players all get off the court and without any interaction between them, or if there's anything happening that you might have to get in and to put a stop to it and get involved with. So you want to be watching that. As they've gone off, then you can move your score sheet and start annotating it, making the proper marks on it. So 2 technical fouls, it means they forfeit a match, right? So anytime 4 strikes or more, it's going to be a match forfeit. I have been reffing a lot of matches and a lot of games. Yes, I've issued a technical foul. I've never had a game forfeit or a match forfeit, just so you know. But you need to be able to answer the questions when it comes to going for an assessment or an evaluation on situations which are not going to be observed on the court. And this is one of the ones that we go to quite commonly and ask, well, how do you document if you've issued a technical foul to a team? And we may give you a situation. So you have to know this, be prepared to answer any questions on this. Again, if you're going for your level 1 or level 2s, and certainly if you're going for certification. This is a chart I did up a few years ago when they come out and they increased, put in a number of different things. So they put in verbal warnings, they put in ejections, and they put in expulsions. The rest of it was still standard: technical warnings, technical fouls, and your game forfeit situations and your match forfeit situations were all consistent. But it was getting enough, a little bit broader and a little bit more confusing. So I did this up to try to give a graphical representation of why you would give it, when you give it, and so forth. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but it's in the book, it's in the handbook, and it's in the USAPA handbook as well, the officiating handbook. Notice in red, this is again 13G2. These are the things that you're authorized to issue a technical foul for. You need to know them, and you need to know when you would apply them, what your level of, what your threshold is of when you would give that. So when is it extremely objectionable language and profanity? What's it for? There's nothing in any documentation that it's for saying this, that, or the other thing. That's going to be up to you, referee discretion, what you're going to allow on your court. And certainly think about if you're on center court and you have maybe pro players, you need to, again, be stopping the action early before they get to that center court situation. Bleeding or blood on the court, that happens occasionally. So you must stop playing after the rally. As Paul asked, you want to make sure then that all the blood is cleaned up before any play resumes, and it is a referee timeout. And if there's blood, there's obviously an injured party. The referees now have been asked to carry bandages so that if it's just a minor nick and a wound that has happened, that you can quickly deal with that and continue with play. But again, you can't continue with play until all the blood on the court is being cleaned up. So every tournament director needs to have a crew that is going to be able to go out there and deal with that situation. Non-volley zone violations, primary responsibility during and following. How did we get to there? Yeah, we already talked about that. We already know all that. So after being in the no volley zone, the player cannot legally volley a ball until both feet have been contacted out the playing surface outside the no volley zone. And pushing off from the no volley zone is a violation. So I think what we want to do here is we want to talk about those non-volley zone violations that don't happen too often, but occasionally. So a person goes in to retrieve a ball that has just gone over there and it bounces. They go into the no volley zone, they play it back, but they put it up a little bit too high. So the opposition is hitting that ball back at the person who is in the no volley zone, that's going to be a point for the team that is striking the ball now and hits that person in the no volley zone. We all understand that. But you as a referee, what you need to be watching is that that person who is in the no volley zone, if they are moving back towards their side of the no volley zone into their court, they need to have both feet down before they play the ball or the ball hits them to be in position. If the ball hits them, it's still going to be a point for the opposition. But if they are able to return that ball, it's still an illegal shot if they don't get back in position with both feet down in that no volley zone. So that's what you have to be watching extremely closely. Anticipate it. You know that any person that has gone into that no volley zone is obviously going to be the target, could be the target, and you need to be looking down to make sure that both feet again make contact before they are able to return that ball. When any player crosses through the no volley zone, let's say they're wanting to do an Ernie, they can step right into that no volley zone to do an Ernie. No problem with that whatsoever. They just can't hit the ball and make contact with that ball until both feet have been established outside the sideline on the playing surface. So outside of the court, outside of the sideline, on the playing surface, both feet touch, they can then make contact with the ball. No problem with that whatsoever. But if they have 1 foot in the air, 1 foot on the sideline, that's going to be a fault. A player nor their equipment can never legally touch the net post, or the opponent's court surface while the ball is still in play. So that's an important one. The ball still needs to not have bounced twice. And if a player attempts to do an Ernie and their clothing, their paddle, or their hand most often touches that net or the net post, you're going to call a fault. If the ball has bounced twice and they've hit a winner and they then ultimately touch the net post and not the no volley zone, then that's fine. That's the shot stands. So again, it's all in timing here, and it's going to be very difficult for you to be watching all of that and know that that ball has bounced twice, but that's the sort of thing that you have to watch for. That's one of the reasons that they've instituted the 2 referee system, so that you can split the responsibilities in that one, and both of you try to watch different aspects of the shot, the feet, the upper body, and so you have a better opportunity of making that call correctly. So crossing the plane of the net is not okay when the player does not make contact with the ball. So what we often see, or sometimes see, is that person is doing a false Ernie. They jump from standing behind the no volley zone, and they jump clear over the sideline towards the net post, and their paddle or a piece of clothing extends beyond that. That's a fault. When they have not struck the ball, that's an immediate fault. It doesn't matter what's happening in the rest of the rally. So that's to be called as soon as that happens. Anytime a foot or a toe extends beneath the net into the opponent's court, that's breaking the plane of the net, and that would be a fault as well. So again, when that ball, you see a ball that is dinked by the other team that goes just over the net and goes straight down, and that player comes rushing forward, you're wanting to make sure that their paddle does not make contact with that net prior to hitting that ball and trying to lift it up over the net, trying to hit it up over the net. Are you thinking about where their foot are? And you need to be watching to make sure their foot does not break the plane of the net. If it extends 1 inch or even a portion beyond that bottom net plane, then it's a fault. Crossing the plane of the net is not a fault on the follow through of any ball that has been hit legally on the opponent's side of the, not the opponent's, on the player's side of the end of the court. So their side of the net, they can hit that ball, and then their follow through can take them past the net plane on the playing surface, no problem whatsoever. It's when they don't hit the ball or they make contact with it after breaking the plane of the net, then that would be a fault. There is exceptions to this. When chasing a bounced ball, spinning back over the net, a player can break the net plane and hit the ball without any problem. So again, team A mishits the ball, goes straight up into the air, comes down onto the opponent's no volley zone. It bounces high with enough backspin to come back to their side. It's going to be a point for that striking team unless the other team can get a paddle onto the ball and make contact with it. So that team, by rule 11I1, can reach over, around, run around the net post and make contact with that ball if it's off to the side on the playing surface, and strike that ball low across the court surface. As long as it makes contact with the court before it hits outside of the court, then it would be a good early shot for them, and that ball would be fine. So again, the rule is 11I1, you bounces over with enough backspin. The other team, B, must make contact with that ball before it bounces twice. They touch the ball going over the net, that's fine. Then the other team now has to hit it back to them. They can reach over, around, or under the net. I don't know why under works. Very difficult to put your paddle again under a net that's hanging only a few inches above the court surface, and you're not allowed to, of course, ground your paddle on the opponent's court at all. That would be a fault. You're not allowed to touch the net. So those are things, again, that we would have to be watching for if a player was attempting to make that shot. We've got some graphical things here, but I'm not going to go through that. It just takes too long. And I think we've talked about all of that quite well. I might have to go out of this. But distractions. Yeah, this is another contentious area. Declare a fault immediately if a player deliberately creates a distraction when the opponent, and this is important, when the opponent is about to strike the ball. Waving the paddle or the arms, for example, is a distraction when the server is going to serve the ball to the opponent. So there's one that is happening prior to the opponent hitting the ball or about to strike the ball, but it would be a distraction and to be called immediately. They're trying to interfere with the server serving the ball. So that's a distraction. Making loud noises or yelling at the point when the opposition is about to strike the ball could be a distraction. Normally speaking, the rule book will say that player communication is not a distraction. So if I have popped the ball up and I go, look out, and that ball is coming down and now is going to be hit, there's a few seconds in there and I've said, look out to my partner. That's player communication. That's not a problem. If I hit the ball and it's gone up in the air and I wait 2 or 3 seconds and the player is about to hit it and I go, look out, then that would be a distraction. So again, that's something that you, as the referee, have complete discretion over, and you're going to have to watch the timing of it. You have to watch it unfold before you. When is it a distraction? When is it not a distraction? So if you haven't called a distraction, let's say on the person who's waving their arms and paddle as the server is attempting to hit it, and that play continues, and at the end of the rally, the team B says, ref, that was a distraction. When I was hitting the ball, that player was waving their arms. And you would have to then, the only way you can rule on that was by determining whether the outcome of that rally was affected by that distraction. And if that were the case, of course, in this case, it happened when the server was serving it and the ball was rallied back and forth 5 or 6 more times. There is no distraction that you can call. However, you've missed it. You should have called it a distraction if, in fact, they were doing that at the beginning of the serve. Forfeits. Player is not ready to play within 10 minutes of the match when it's been announced, is a game forfeit. Now, we mentioned, I think this last week, that's a possible game forfeit. We want to give a little bit of discretion. So at the 10-minute mark, you can legally forfeit a player or a team, but we usually are going to give a minute or 2, and we're going to probably talk to the tournament director to make sure that there isn't extenuating circumstances before we actually award a game forfeit and tell the opposition they have won because this team has forfeited that game. Or sorry, in this game, just a game, and it would be a match forfeit if that game was a 1-15 match, which is the next bullet. If it's just a game forfeit, then we're going to give 2 minutes, and then they have 2 minutes more before they come to start the second game within that that match. So a player or a team receiving 1 technical warning and 1 technical foul in a match equals 3 strikes that we talked about before. In addition, technical warning or a technical foul or 2 technical fouls equals a match forfeit, 4 strikes. And so that would be a match forfeit. The player may choose to retirement, and the match will be awarded to the opposition, the opponents. But retiring is usually as a result of a medical timeout, for example. That's when a team is going to retire, that they have not been able to get back on the court before 15 minutes, or they determine right away that their injury is bad enough right when it happens and say, we're going to have to retire from this match. And so they'll retire. So how you annotate the score sheet for a forfeit and for a retirement is a little bit different, and something that we need to, again, learn how to do. Other behaviors that result in a forfeit: making deliberate or aggressive physical contact with any person, striking or throwing a paddle or a ball that endangers a person or any property. Player refuses to wear a designated starting server identification band, and if during a match a player is discovered to be playing with a paddle, that is not approved. Right? So you've asked them at the beginning of the match, everybody has checked that everybody has a USA approved paddle. Let me see your paddle, please. And you look at it and you go on. And you've started the match, and then you go, my goodness, that one was you know, the paddle that I've not seen, and you check on it and it is not illegal, then they would forfeit the entire match after the match has started. So documenting a game forfeit. In this particular case, this team, again, Smith and Smith, have received their technical warning and a technical foul. So three strikes, so they're going to forfeit the game. So we put GF over here for game forfeit. We put a line through all the unused portions and the timeout boxes. We do the same thing for the other team, with the exception of we're going to circle their winning score of 11. And we would go ahead and put that up there as a, it would be at one game. This is only one game, so we're going to play the next games. We've done our documentation here. So we've done our next, we're going to do game 2, and we have completed game 2 at 11-5. When this team gets another technical warning, which gives them the 4 strikes, and then we put in a match forfeit. And at that point, they were tied at 4-4. However, now for annotation purposes, we've got to turn this score sheet completely around. And we're going to put winners up here. So we actually do physically turn this around. We then put the scores up here as 11-0. Let me see if the next slide has it. Does not. It should have. This is 11-0, 11-0, and 11-0. Because of the forfeits, they don't get any points. No points are awarded to the team regardless of what they made. If it was a retirement, you would see points there for them. Any points made during a retirement are awarded in case it's a round robin tournament. But if it's a forfeit due to disciplinary issues, then they get 0 points and the other team gets 11. So it's recorded that way: 11-0, 11-0, 11-0. Get them to initial. We put winners up there, and we write forfeit down here now as well. Forfeit right there. Unruly players. There are a few out there.
Alan,
Yes.
Alan, can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can try.
Just
Go ahead.
back on that other slides,
Okay.
that one game that they won, they don't get the credit for that score, the 11-6, 11-5 game, they don't
Yeah.
get credit for that?
No, they don't, because because they forfeited the match. Yeah, I see your point. that they did nothing wrong in this match and they won 11-6 or 11-5. But they don't get credit for it because they've lost the match. So everything is recorded as 11-0. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Unruly players. Yes, that happens from time to time. You then have to lower the temperature. You must remain calm and hear what they have to say. Meet with the players away from any spectators. Again, anytime I say meet with the players, where are you meeting with them? At the net strap, at center court, each and every time in your office. You're going to talk to them about the situation and you make any disciplinary decisions at that time, awarding technical warnings, verbal warnings, technical warnings, and technical fouls that are appropriate. Tournament director has the option to eject the player from the tournament or expel them from the tournament grounds, but only they do. So that's the point we want to make there. That's not something you as a referee can do. You can award technical warnings and technical fouls only, and they have an accumulative effect, as we've already seen. 1 strike, 2 strikes, and you're out. Hearing impaired players. There's quite a number of hearing impaired players out there. We have to try to accommodate best we can. So you want to speak in their direction. If they're reading lips, you want to give the best hand signals you can. You certainly want to be sensitive and tolerant of them asking to have their score repeated or whatever it might be. Enunciate clearly and consider using extending fingers. I always go 1 or 2, like 4, 3, 1, making sure they see the fingers, and 2, that way they've known at least I've called the score. They may not know exactly what the score is, but they know whether it's a first or second server, and indeed the score has been called. And that's another good reason for dropping the hand and allowing play to commence. Wheelchair rules. Certainly the rule book has it in there, and the important issue is that the chair is considered part of the player's body, and the balls may double bounce, including out of the court on the second bounce, and they can play it up until it bounces 3 times. And there is no volley zone violation until the rear wheels actually touch the no volley zone. So you just have to be watching, not the front wheels, but again, the big rear wheels. And when they touch that no volley zone, that would be a fault. All right, before we get into this, let's just take a ask if there's any questions here from anybody. Any questions? Do we got anything online there, Rose or?
Alan, I have a question.
Okay, Jan, is that you?
Yep.
All
I'm
right.
just wondering about these medical timeouts. Do they always have to involve medical personnel?
Tell me a time when you think it wouldn't.
I had quite a bad leg cramp in a game that was being played and didn't need medical personnel, but I needed time to walk it off.
Medical has to approve or not approve a medical timeout as an official. So yes, they need to be in attendance and they need to approve it or not approve it. They're, going back in my early days, I've been reffing for long enough now that when we first started, cramping was considered a self-inflicted wound because you hadn't hydrated and was not allowed. And referees were told, do not allow medical timeouts for cramping. That has since been discontinued and now it's being taken completely away. Thank goodness. It's not a referee's call whether to approve or not approve a timeout. And that goes straight over to the tournament director or again, medical.
Okay.
So yes, they must be there. They must be in attendance and they must approve that medical or not. After they've come and approved it, you can have up to 15 minutes and you can send them away, I would imagine. That shouldn't be an issue. Darlene
Okay.
or Daleen?
Yeah, it's Greg again.
Oh, Greg, sorry, Greg.
Oh, no problem. I'm
Greg,
using her computer.
Well, Greg, Greg, you can change the name by clicking on the three buttons that are up there by your mute button, and it will allow you to rename.
Okay.
If I can
Didn't
do
know
that
that.
for you. Oh, I can. What is it, Greg?
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could do that. Greg what?
Same last name, Baron. Yeah, B-A-R-O-N.
Look at that, Greg. You're now Greg.
Wow. You're my new technical guy.
Yeah, well, that's the first time I've ever done that.
Okay, thank you. Just on a verbal warning, I know it's noted on the front of the score sheet, but is there also notation on the back of the score sheet for verbal warning?
There is not.
There is not.
There is no
Okay.
need. No.
And so you don't have to put what the verbal warning was for or anything. You
No,
just
just-
note
ju-
that,
just-
note the score, and
That's right.
okay. And
Now-
I have a second question.
Yeah, before you leave that one, Greg, just want to make sure that everybody understands, however, when a verbal warning is given, how many verbal warnings can you give to a team?
Just one, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. So that's why it doesn't need to be by any, annotated as anybody's name. It just goes there. That team now is out of verbal warnings. And if they do something else wrong, you have no exception but to give them at least nothing less than a technical warning
So each team is allowed one verbal warning
in a match.
in a match.
In a match of 3 games, if that's the case.
Okay. The second part of my question, just going back to the legal paddles. So you're checking the paddles and you're announcing to the team, is this USA approved paddle?
Well,
Correct?
that's what they recommend you doing when you're doing your briefing. The first thing you're
Okay.
going to do, I'll do a paddle check. Are all your paddles approved by USA Pickleball? And, get them to respond to that. Now, that does not relinquish you the responsibility of checking the paddles, making sure they comply, making sure as far as you know they're USA approved. But what it's doing is putting the onus on them more than you, the referee, so that if you miss it, and we do play 1 point within that match, and then another referee from another court looks over and says, hey, that player is using a carbon. Did you check the serial number on that? I forgot. Would you come in here for a minute, Greg? Bring your paddle. And you look at it and say, this is a carbon paddle. I don't see any serial number, batch number on it. That's illegal. I'm afraid that's a match forfeit. They're gone.
Yeah, wouldn't the players really complain about that because you went through the paddle inspection, etc., and aren't you supposed to kind of catch that at that time?
Well, I think that's the point I'm making. That's why they're recommending now that you ask the players, do you all have approved paddles?
Okay.
And they provide an answer. That again does not relinquish you of the responsibility. You're going to look, you're going to check, you're going to do your due diligence on it, and you're going to do the best job you can. However, if subsequently it's found out, the onus is still on them. They can't complain. Say, well, you looked at it. It was good when you looked at it. No, it's illegal. It's illegal. You brought it to the tournament, not me.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Dennis.
Yeah. About the medical timeout, unless I'm wrong, either the tournament director and the medical team has to agree if it's legal or illegal timeout, medical timeout. So even if you don't have a medical team coming to the court, if the tournament director comes in, is one of the two choice to decide if it's a legal timeout, medical timeout.
That's right. That's it exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing is that the verbal warning, like I remember it happened to me. I gave a verbal warning for slowing down the game, and if I look in the best practice, they write something in the back of the sheet. Unless I'm, I would have to look, but I think they write something about what was the verbal warning.
No, not that I'm aware of. There's nothing that goes there. It just goes a verbal VW underneath the technical warning, technical foul boxes. That's all the annotation you need.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, Suzanne.
Sorry, I just want to make it clear that I understand the crampy because that happened to me this weekend. And I said, well, do you need a medical person in? And they said, no, I'm just cramping. So what should I have done at that point? Should I have just said, okay, well, we have to continue the game? Or at that point, what am I to do? Because that's exactly what happened.
Well, I can answer that easily. I mean, it's not a medical timeout until medical has approved it or denied it. So that whole time that you're waiting, say it takes 5 minutes for medical to get there, That's fine. You haven't started your stopwatch. It's not part of the 15 minutes. As soon as they arrive at the court, their first job is going to make a determination. Is there a medical situation or not? Are they going to approve it or not? That's the first thing you need them to let you know. And you've started, as soon as they've arrived on the court, you've started your stopwatch. They should give you that response within a minute or so, and it carries on or it doesn't. And then the player is then
But that's
told,
what I asked. I did. I asked. I said, do you want medical personnel? And they said, no, I'm just cramping.
Suzanne, that's where you're going wrong.
Yeah.
You do not ask. The player
Okay.
asks. Now, that's again a very good question, and that's why I love these questions and answers, because you've just brought up the
Okay.
point that that the player, you've asked the player, do they want a medical timeout? That's something that we do not do. Okay?
Actually, my words
Suzanne,
were, my exact, okay,
Suzanne,
okay,
let me finish,
okay.
please, and I'm making a point.
Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
you've asked the question, I'm going to provide an answer for everybody here. So that person has, you're going to ask them if they need a medical timeout is wrong. There's a situation that's happened on the court. They've twisted their ankle. They're down on the ground. And you say, are you all right? No, I'm not all right. Are you taking a timeout? No, I need a medical timeout. That's what you're wanting them to say. If they don't say I want a medical timeout, then you say, well, you're taking a timeout, or I need to call the score and we need to get the game moving. So at no point do you as a referee ask them if they want a medical timeout, because we get into this medical timeout situation where you as a referee can call a medical timeout again if you think that there is a sufficient cause that that person is having whatever issue that they're not recognizing. Okay, so that
Okay, that's
thanks.
exactly what I'm looking for is the verbiage. That what you just said, that's exactly what I was looking for. So can you say it again, please? So I understand it.
Well, again,
You said,
there's a
do
situation.
you need a medical?
No, I did not say, do you need a
personnel?
medical timeout? No, there's a situation that's happened on the court. Are you taking a timeout if they're not getting up right away? Right? And if they say, no, we're not taking a timeout, then you're saying, I need to get the game moving, 15 seconds, please. And then they'll
Okay.
say, I can't move. Then they have to say, whether you're taking a timeout or I'm calling the score. Well, I need a medical timeout, then they can go medical, but they are the ones that need to initiate the call for medical, not you. Unless,
Okay,
again,
okay.
it's a situation where you're going to call a referee medical timeout, which is totally different. Okay.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Thank you.
Right, anything else on any of the lots of ground that we've covered? Why don't we take a 2-minute break again, if you need to? And we'll commence in I guess in 2 minutes. I'll let you know when there's a 15-second warning.
Alan, can I ask you a quick question in regards to that last comment?
Yep, go ahead.
What if the player is unaware that he's able to take a medical timeout?
Yeah, that came to mind even when I was saying that. So certainly it happens. We have a lot of new players out there. So you could say that, if they're saying, no, I'm not taking a timeout, and are you aware that you could ask for a medical timeout, is what you could say?
Yeah.
So-
Are you aware that you could
Yeah,
have the
are you
option of a
aware?
medical
Yeah.
timeout or something? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know so many of them, they wouldn't know. So
Yeah, I think the point that we want to make here, that you don't want to be in a position where you could be called coercing them in. I didn't want a medical timeout. They made me take a medical timeout. That's what we're trying to get away from.
yeah, you can't instigate it, but you can kind of lead it if you need to.
Yeah, well, again, that's what I'm saying. We don't want them to say I was coerced into asking for a medical timeout, because again, what happens here, and I guess we need everybody back here to finish the discussion, but there's a if the medical has not approved their timeout, then what is the ramifications back to them?
Correct. Right.
Right. So we're back to, again, loss of a timeout and a technical warning. And also the loss of the medical timeout. Sorry. Loss of the medical timeout. Right. So there is consequence. There is consequence for asking for a medical timeout, and should it not be approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, understandable for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have everybody back here? I guess those that aren't back haven't said anything. We'll continue.
All right.
Section 4, what we're going to talk about is some of the new rules, the 9 that were of any consequence at all for 2023. And I think, again, we've covered a couple of them, so we'll go quickly through this. Player positioning and service questions. Again, I think we talked about this the first night. If a player recognizes a potential problem and they ask, am I good? What we as referees want to do now is you want to respond by getting them back into the proper position. So as soon as they say, am I good? You can say, yes, you are the correct server, but you're not in the correct position, or no, you're not the correct server and your partner is, but they're not in the correct position. So you simply, at that point, get them into the best position as quickly as you possibly can, but by providing the best response to that question. However, if they ask the simple question, am I the correct server? And then you would answer yes or no. And if it's no, then it goes over to the other person. And if they don't ask any questions and you call the score and they were in the wrong position, that's on them, not on you. We just have to move this down a little bit. There we go. So service replay and faults. A referee can call for a replay if they believe the serve is questionable. We did cover that. And if they identify the serve as illegal, they are to call that an illegal fault immediately. They identified it as an illegal serve. So the only real change there again is any questionable calls. They can make that stop play questionable, whatever the situation may be. And we'll replay the point and I'll recall the score. Spin serves, we talked about. I don't think anybody has any issues with that anymore. You again are not allowed to put motion on that ball at all. I had a situation in the most recent tournament, watching that particularly. There was a video that went around, and that person, I don't know if you can see my hand in the video, but they were doing a little bit of a manipulation with the fingers as they threw the ball up in the air. So it was hard to detect whether or not they were adding rotation to the ball. But when I looked at not the movement of the hand as much as watching the holes in the ball. So if a ball is just tossed up in the air to be served, it's got very little rotation. It probably will have a little bit of rotation where the holes are moving around, but they're not spinning. And that's the difference. That's what you have to look at. And if you get one where the holes are moving quickly, that ball has been manipulated, and that is an illegal serve and should be called that immediately. Not questionable. That is illegal, and you should call it immediately. So what I'm telling you now is that all the other things you're having to do at the service point in time is watching the release of that ball, how it's tossed, and what the holes are doing and what rotation is being put into it. Okay, and that at least that's equal for both the volley serve and the drop serve. No manipulation. So again, if the incorrect score is called, the referee and the players can correct it up until the return of the serve is made. If no mistake is made, it's still a fault, and they have all the other situations that happen in there. Timeouts and apparel changes. Anytime that we have to make an apparel change that the tournament director, head referee have said that shirt may be camouflaging the ball, they're given reasonable amount of time to make any change that is needed. And I think that's the point that we want to make here, reasonable amount of time to get the change done and get back onto the playing surface and into the court. Equipment timeouts, no longer required to use their timeouts, just granted. And again, reasonable amount of time to do that. And it's for as many situations as may occur during a match. But that would be peculiar if there's usually more than one, but it could happen. And here's the change of clothing one again. The tournament director may require if they're inappropriate. I actually went to a tournament not very long ago where somebody had a very inappropriate shirt on. And a player came to me before they presented themselves on the match, and that was dealt with discreetly, and they were asked to remove it before they even got onto the court, and that was done. But if they get on the court and it's the distracting color, then you as a referee have got nothing to say about that. You simply, again, tournament director, head referee, their sole discretion, their situation to deal with. I just wanted to point out, I guess, in there with that second bullet, this is not a new rule. The wording has been modified to make it clearer that tournament directors have this authority. And so, again, not new, just re-amplification of the rule to make sure that everybody understands it a little bit clearer. Degraded or cracked ball. If a player agrees that a ball has been degraded, soft or out of round or near cracking, the referee can change the ball. If it's not obviously broken and not all players agree that the ball should be replaced, then the current ball will be used. All right. So we've had situations where, you know, the team wants a particular ball, but the other team won the right to serve first, and they have the ability to choose the ball. And then you get in 1 or 2 points, and the other team is calling for a ball change because they don't like the way it's rotating. If you see nothing wrong with it as the referee, that ball is not to be changed. If the other team doesn't agree, you can ask the other team, do you want a ball change? And if they say no, then there is no ball change if there's nothing wrong with that ball, visibly wrong with that ball. If it's obviously cracked through hole to hole, then you're going to change it without any problem. Right, section 5, working with line judges. Again, I hope that you will require this before too long, because I think line judges are an integral part of the officiating team and need to be out there. The problem with line judges is getting them sufficiently trained, getting them, just getting them on the court and being there when you need them. This was the USA Pickleball did do an official certification program for line judges. It didn't go too far. It went down and we did a few people, but the problem was they suddenly realized that there wasn't probably enough money to go around to pay both the referees and the line judges, and the players sometimes didn't like the line judges' calls. So certainly in the professional leagues, that's where we saw them moving away from them. And so that's where we are now. They're not being used a lot of the time. But again, we'll go down what we need to know about working with line judges. So they can do more than just call lines, and are to watch the flow of the game, to watch whether a ball double bounces twice, whether it comes off of the player's clothing, hits their hat, whatever. They don't make any of those calls overtly. They have to wait to be asked by the referee if they saw something. If the referee doesn't ask and you have seen something and you're a line judge, what you tell them is that before I call the score to start the next rally, you simply raise your hand and call ref, get my attention, and I will come over and talk to you. And at that point, you know, that line judge would say, ref, I distinctly saw that ball bounce twice, or that ball came off of their shoulder after it came off their paddle and went over the net. Whatever the case is. However, it's still up to that referee whether or not, how they want to handle that situation and what call they want to use. Now, hopefully, again, they're going to listen to their line judge and to make the call. It's sometimes very difficult on a double bounce. I make my double bounce calls immediately I see them. I call not up right away. And so everybody on the court knows that I've called a double bounce the second that it happens. So that usually wouldn't require the line judges to confirm or deny. So again, the point that we want to make is that they're certainly part of the officiating team, and the referee is responsible for briefing the line judges and their expectations before they go out onto the court. So anytime that you are being given a medal match, for example, with line judges, you're going to go out there, you're going to get them together, you're going to let them know what your expectations are, what line calls, how you want them to make the line calls, what signals you want them to give, and to check out that they know exactly what they're doing when a ball is in and out is sort of key for that position. Line judges, certainly they need to know the rules to apply. They don't need to know to the extent of the referees, obviously, but they need to be able to identify the situations and explain to the referee what they've seen. They need to remain attentive, and that's where we, of course, have the biggest issue with line judges. They go out there and they start watching the match, and they're not attentive to their line. And as soon as you lose, the line judge loses your credibility in being able to make a call, or is hesitant in making a call, that's when trouble starts and you have difficulty as a referee. So what you need to do is to go over and have a word with them and to try to get them to focus and to keep their attention on the match before them. Their main function, obviously, is to make out calls on their assigned line. Normally speaking, their line judges have their baselines and they have the sidelines, and they make those calls. If they have the baseline, they are going to make foot faults as the paddle strikes the ball and their foot touches that line. They are going to make a foot fault call, and so should you as the referee. And that's great. That's a very efficient officiating team. They're going fault, and foot fault on the baseline, and that player is probably not going to question and look at it. It's going to be again a side out or a second server. There is a situation where we taught those certified line judges how to make the wrong server or wrong receiver calls, and to give hand signals for the same. But again, I put that in red just so that, again, that's very leery as to the amount of time that we do it. So that won't happen probably at this level. Sorry, I'm just moving this down here. And provide opinion when asked by the referee, just as I said before, on double bounces, on hitting a piece of clothing. Don't hesitate as the referee to utilize your line judges and to give your line judges hand signals, head nods. And whenever they're making calls, they're going to be looking at you. You should be looking at them and be able to make a nod. For example, when they're calling a ball in and giving you 2 palms down, I'm looking and I'm going to give them a nod that I've seen that, and I thank them for the call. Hopefully you won't have to instruct them to turn off their cell phones. They should be aware of that. They don't need any to become distracted in any way. They need to, again, be attentive and avoid side conversations with anybody that's there. They need to be told that. Do not get involved in any conversations with anybody on the sidelines, any spectators. And certainly, even if the players start talking to you, just look straight forward and make sure that they go through the referee and not to you. If the players turn around and go, "What was the call?" you could go back into your 2 palms down as obviously calling it in, or you've called it out. But that's all. I avoid any conversation with the players. Follow the play and be prepared to offer an opinion, again, on the double bounce off the clothing, and avoid being influenced by any spectators or the players' line calls. You're in the best position to make that call. You tell them they're looking down that line, and they're going to be able to tell whether that edge of the ball struck the playing surface or it touched the line or the court before it bounced, or on the bounce, that's where it touched. So they make the appropriate call, one being out and the other just the 2 palms down, saying that that ball was good and I can't call it out. So in the pre-match briefing, they respond to every out call on assigned lines. They need to be told verbally out and loudly. and the visual is extenuating the arm that is pointing in the outward direction of the outer bounds. In other words, the sideline then would be down on my left-hand side, and I'm pointing up to my left, holding it at about a 45-degree angle, fingers extended and raised, and you're going to hold any line, any signal for about 5 seconds, and then bring it down after shouting out. So you're going to do the verbal first, and then extend the hand in the direction of the out call in this case. When the ball is in, you're silently not going to say a word. You're just going to push both hands forward, down below, palms crossed, and indicating that ball touched the line or touched the court and is in. No out call is required, and no verbal call is required. Call service foot faults loudly, yep, baselines and sideline extensions. So if you have a sideline and a player is doing an Ernie, for example, you're not going to make any call on this one, but you're going to be watching down your sideline. The problem is you as a line judge doesn't really know whether or not that ball has volleyed or not, but they do see that person jumping over the sideline, trying to do an Ernie and trying to jump from the sideline to the playing surface outside. And if the heel of the foot touches, you're not going to do anything again. But if you've seen that and the referee doesn't catch it, you may again want to raise your hand and call them over and tell them that when that person did that Ernie, their foot did touch the line prior to hitting the ball. Sideline judges need to also watch the extensions of the sidelines and the center lines. So they're watching to make sure the players, when they're serving, are within those boundaries that we talked about before. And anytime they raise their arm to signal for the referee's attention, and they can quietly go, ref, and ask get their attention over if they haven't seen it before. The score is called to start the next rally. If the next rally is started, then anything that happened before that is now gone. No opportunity to change it. So before every match, this is again very important if you're going, well, not so much because they don't have line judges anymore, but certainly if you're going for evaluation, you want to make sure you point out to the evaluator that at the start of each game, before you start and resume play after a timeout, after the 15-second call, you're going to ask referees or line judges, ready, please, and you get a response from all of them, and you make sure they're in their place and ready to do their job. And then you would carry on with your 15-second routine. If both the line judges and the referee can't make a line call, the rally will be replayed. If the referee overrules the line judge's out call, therefore calling it in, the rally shall end in a replay, right? I've had that happen a couple of times. My line judge has called it out. It's on my sideline, and I've looked down the line. I see that ball touch the line. The opponent looks straight up at me and say, ref, did you see that? And I've gone, yes, I saw that ball is in. And therefore, a replay, please. And we replay the point. So just so you're aware of the hand signals that they were taught, clasping the hands over the head to signal wrong server or wrong receiver is just in a triangle where you're taking your hands, putting them together, raising that up above the head. And that is the signal for a player in the wrong, being the wrong receiver, wrong server, or out of position. For coaching, I love this one. This is where you just raise your hands in a great big U. Again, I can't see myself doing that right now. So again, the big U with your hands just extending out to the sides. And the way I like to explain that one to differentiate it from the triangle that we've seen there to U, you're going to, it's great big mouth. All right. So we got both hands that are moving and saying great big mouth over here. Somebody is coaching. And that way you allow the referee to come over and handle the situation. All right, the referee calls the served balls that don't clear the no volley zone. Again, the no volley zone is strictly the referee's responsibility. And if that serve ball touches that line or touches the no volley zone, you immediately call fault, second server or side out. Player calls the center line. Normally speaking, we don't have any line judges on the center line, so they call that. And line judges call all the other lines. That, just so that you are aware, the usual lineup for line judges is certainly to have your 2 baselines and 2 sidelines. So that, 4-person line judge team is the norm. They do sometimes, they had 6, and therefore the sidelines only did up to the net. So at their end of the court, they did from the baseline up to their end of the sideline to the net, and that was it. And then the other 2 took over the other end. That makes it a little bit more difficult, I thought, for referees knowing where to look. But that's another point that I'll make with you right now. You as the referee need to align or make sure that your line judges are put out in such a manner that you're going to be facing all of them. So you're going to have, let's say, to the left, you should be able to have the far sideline judge. You're going to have on that person's right, you're going to have the baseline judge, so that they're looking at you and you're looking at them. You're going to now, to that person's left one more time, you're going to have the sideline judge. And then right to your very far left, you are going to have the other sideline judge. And that's the person who you can see probably the least, because they're right to your extreme left on the same sideline that you're standing on, and you're looking in that one direction. But you've got those 2 people there. You've got your 1 baseline. So your only other person is now going to be completely down to the other baseline, and obviously to your right, but on the far side of the court, so that you're looking at them. And anytime that they raise their hand, you see that hand motion going up, you're going to be able to call, the way you're going to be able to go over and ask them what the issue is and speak to them. Just going over here, just saying that you're going to explain to them at the beginning of the match too, that they're going to, the right to appeal any unseen balls is in. So you must make sure that they understand that. It shouldn't be too difficult. Right, so a couple of last little sayings here. It's all about the increasing competency, standardization, consistency, and professionalism in refereeing, and that's why we have the best practices. That's why we have this training session, and that's what we're trying to do. So I want you to go out on that court. Anytime that you're refereeing, you need to be practicing your professionalism, your competency, and not forgetting that the match is about the players and the game, not the referee, not you and all the calls that you make. And you want to facilitate it best you can and as equally as you can for both teams. And as they say, the most successful referee is the one no one remembers after the match. Unfortunately, you're not out there. Right. Any questions? Hope there's a couple. Do we still have some people from Atlantic Canada with us? Oh, Marianne, that's good to see. We got people coming up here. If you would turn on your videos, it's nice for me to see you. Otherwise, I think you're sleeping, Rod. Did you get that, Sylvia?
I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Good. Just waking you up. A few people coming to life here. Nope, I'm in the dark, aren't I? I've been in the dark for a while. Let me just deal with that. No wonder nobody saw my hand moving. All right, so that ended that's the last of the 2 sessions. So we'll just deal with any questions that anybody has.
I have a question about like an unsanctioned play, or I guess it's not doing a tournament, and they're getting coaching from the spectators who actually are members of the same club as the players. So they're not actually the coach, but they're what do we do about things like that?
Maurice, it doesn't matter who they are. If they're providing direction, it's coaching to the team. So you just, you say that's coaching, you know, and again, depends what they were saying and how they were saying it, what the circumstances were. You know, I've had situations where it's 10-0. And Rob's wife came from behind the fence and said, Rob, take a time out for God's sakes. And so, you know, at 10-0, that was a pretty important coach, and it could change the reflection of the game. So right away, technical warning against that team.
Thank you. That's that
Yeah.
was
And again, some of them are innocuous and not really meant to be coaching. It's hard to give examples off the top of your head, but you know, if that's the case, then a verbal warning might be in order. And you know, the other thing that's very difficult is to go over after a spectator. So what the best way to handle that is you're going to go to the team. That's coaching, and they're providing direction. I'm going to give you a verbal warning. You may want to tell them that you don't need their help anymore, so that they shut that person down and not you. Now, the question that I've been asked quite a few times, well, what about if you get somebody that's really for the other team? They're there for the other team, and they coach the team because they want them to get the technical warning. Now, that's pretty sad in that situation. But you know, it could happen. But then again, you trying to establish, do you know this person, and then you know, having that conversation. I think the best way is just deal with the players, and it's done. We were dealing with. Let me just turn off the recording here.